Welcome to Stone Mountain State Park in North Carolina for another training segment of Ask Vince. Vince, today we're going to be going over internal and external lashing of a basket. Would you show us through this process?
Yeah, no problem, Carney. Anytime we're working in the vertical environment, trying to move a patient up or down, we want to make sure our patient's securely fastened into the appropriate stretcher. Today we're going to be using a heavy-duty Stokes basket. Basically, we're going to use the basket and either two 25-foot pieces of body cord or two 25-foot pieces of webbing, or in this case we've got one of each so we can demonstrate. Both are appropriate for lashing.
Now, Vince, before I've seen people try to do just external lashing, and of course when that happens they stand the basket up either on the feet or on the head, and the body ends up moving back and forth. How important is it to have the internal lashing?
Well, that's pretty important, Carney. Several years ago, that was not part of the procedures that most people used in rescue, but due to incidents, they've found a need to add the internal lashings. The external lashings are sufficient if you're moving across just rocky terrain, pretty much a flat slope or a slightly hilly environment. But anytime we're working in a vertical environment, where you got the potential of the basket flipping or inverting or getting a significant angle on it, we want to make sure that patient is securely fastened to the basket so nothing comes loose.
Okay. Well, where do we start?
Okay, to start with, we're going to use our 25-foot piece of webbing, and we're going to do the internal lashing. And what you're going to do with it is you're going to find the center of it.
And notice what we have here is a 1-inch piece of tubular webbing that is about 20 to 25 foot long. And in this case, you may find it very helpful for you in finding the center to take a magic marker and mark the center of the strap. In this case, we have that, which helps us out considerably. All right?
Okay, you're going to take that and you're going to place it between the victim's legs. You could put this in the basket before the victim's actually placed in the basket, but if not, you just place it right there and simply reach under the knees, the little space behind the knees, and you can pull out from each side. What we're going to attempt to accomplish now is we're going to attempt to form two loops that will be a fixed size, and they're going to be fitted around the victim's waist. And you're going to do that by taking the loop and pulling it up, and we're going to come through it with each piece from the side, and we're going to tie a locking overhand knot which keeps these loops from strangulating the legs. We don't want anything to tighten down. If the weight is to shift, we don't want these loops to tighten down like a noose and cut off circulation to the legs. So it's very important at this point to put in the overhand knot.
Okay.
Okay, from this point, once we've got those two securely positioned around the legs, we're going to take the end and we're going to travel to the vertical pin that runs from the top rail down, and we're going to come back down and then pass through this loop and travel to the head of the basket.
Now, what is the purpose of doing this over to the side pin where we are?
Okay, it's got to basically secure us in, and this is going to secure us in at the waistline. It's also going to fasten what is the equivalent of a Class 2 harness or Class 1 harness to the basket right here at the hip level. And this is going to secure us in and keep us from being able to slide down. These two leg loops will act like a harness and keep me from being able to pass to the bottom of the basket, which could happen because typically our belay line is set up for a vertical position. Even in a horizontal lower, if the main line were to fail, the basket's going to drop into the vertical position. Therefore, the thrust of the weight is going to be towards the feet, and this is going to dissipate that energy across the entire pelvic girdle and keep me from submarining out from underneath the bottom of the external lashing.
Okay.
And Vince, that overhand knot that we tied right there, that's pretty much just to keep that from tightening down on you too tight, correct?
Exactly. Exactly. We don't want these things like a noose. We don't want them like a slip knot and tightening down and strangulating the leg if they do put a lot of load on it.
So we're simply going to take this strap, go around the basket, and then come back to the inside, at which time we'll even out the load and then bring it back up to the head.
Yeah.
Now, when we affix this at the head, what's the acceptable methods for changing this and tying it off at the head?
Well, there's probably several, but the two that are probably the most common is either to tie a split lock and clove hitch around the vertical pin over the top rail, or you can go around that vertical pin only and you can utilize a round turn and 2 half hitches. Either one would securely fasten it. And what these do is act like 2 shoulder straps. If for some reason the basket were to be inverted head down, they would actually trap my shoulders and keep me from submarining out the top end of the basket.
Okay. One thing to keep in mind when we are doing this with our victim is you want to keep your hands here and allow adequate protection of the straps or the rope from hitting the victim in the face. Another thing that may happen is you end up with a lot of excess cord, and what we do with that is we simply either tie it or put it inside the basket. So now that the internal lashing is complete, what's our next step?
Yeah, once we've secured the victim with the internal lashing, the next step is to take the 25-foot body cord, and again, we're going to find the center of it, and we're going to place it underneath the bottom of the 2 feet on the instep of the patient's feet.